invite Anthony to the stage. So Anthony is the CEO of OpenMoney. You might notice on your agenda it says eVestor, but they've rebranded today. So great to have you with us today. Is the rebranding today?
Yesterday?
This week?
This week. So if it had been here last week, I'd be introducing myself as eVestor.
eVestor.
We're such a fluid company.
You have to pivot, I guess, these days, right? So you founded eVestor in 2016?
Yeah, we started working it in early 2016, and we launched a sort of MVP in April 2017.
Okay. And there's two different bits. We should probably just explain the rebranding briefly, and then we can go into the...
Yeah, I mean, the rebranding probably comes out of a lot of the learnings that we found post-launch, in that obviously one of the things we wanted to do was to build a service that could provide a personal recommendation to those people for whom traditional financial advice and face-to-face financial advice was just not accessible, and they couldn't afford it. So the prices were beyond what they wanted to or were willing to pay. So to do that, we obviously, and it leads into what we're doing with the FCA, is one of the biggest challenges there is not only how do we provide something accessible, and that's a technology challenge, but how can we do that within the rules, because clearly we didn't want to, if we were going to give a personal recommendation, we wanted it to be, we expect it to be done under the same rules as a traditional advisory. So that meant having taking some interpretations around some of the rules, and we're certainly around charges, production, documentation, and certain things like timing. So that's where the work we did with the FCA came in quite handy.
Because I think this is the reason that we wanted to have you here was because I think we often, there's often a lot of moaning about the regulator, and I already have done a bit of moaning about the regulator, but your experience was quite positive, which I think is a really good example to have as part of the conversation today. So anyway, so tell us more about that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So my experience has rightly or wrongly, has led to me having quite a broad relationship with the regulator. So what I do know is that it's better to work with them than against them. As part of our application process, when we're setting up, we were invited to participate in the sandbox. And obviously, the invitation from the regulator doesn't really come with an RSVP. So we sort of said, right, okay, well, this sounds quite a good idea. So we went down to the Canary Wharf, and obviously the sandbox was quite new for them there, so they were very proud of it. And we got there and went into this room, and there was a couple of young lads there who were looking at me as suspiciously as I was looking at them. And then within about 5 minutes, where I hadn't mentioned blockchain, crypto, space travel, they were like, "Oh, I think you're in the wrong room here." And effectively, that's what became the advice unit, which I think was the sort of the poor relation to the sandbox, which was for the real moonshot type stuff. But once we got in there, then it was quite a good. We had a very positive experience. I mean, obviously, anything with a regulator, you've got to go in. Eyes wide open. They're never going to rubber stamp it and say, yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. But they did say no to a number of things, and those no's were almost as helpful, if not more, than expecting them to come out and say yes, yes, yes. And the other problem, particularly as a startup, was that they just moved at glacial pace. It's a very, I don't know how big it is now, but the team was small compared to their ambition. But it was very useful for us when we were running ideas around how we wanted the business to be set up. And a couple of examples around that. So clearly, our work so far and what we've been investing in is to build a system that can provide advice on a repeatable basis. So once it's built, then the numbers you push through have very little incremental cost to them. And that means going through the whole advice process and trying to make it frictionless or as enjoyable as it can be without it becoming so unwieldy that for most people, they would lose interest. So once you realize that actually, once you focus down on what your target audience is a very simple one, and you stay focused, because it's quite easy, and I see it with quite a few digital examples, is that you can sort of get carried away with designs and, oh, that page looks a bit bare, let's shove another graph in it. And really, if you focus, when you're, particularly at our end, which is the very small value customers with minimal to or small amounts to invest, then that tends to come with a different level of engagement than, and certainly financial literacy that you generally expect with those people who have more complex affairs. I mean, that's just our view on things. So areas such as risk and attitude to risk and capacity for loss was a key area for us to talk through with the regulator, because our sort of testing we did with consumers was that a lot of the systems were very challenging for people to navigate where they weren't sat with an advisor. Yeah. So obviously when it's done as a sort of part of a face-to-face process, then a lot of the concepts of these psychometric tests and what the graphs mean and, ratios and things like that are a bit easier to at least explain, almost impossible to do when you have a totally different interface.
Yeah.
So we worked with the regulator to really strip that down and enables us to cover attitude to risk, horizons and capacity for loss in 3 screens to a, which,
And that would be down from how many screens previously?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you can go into hundreds, can't you, really, some of these ones. But, and I think it goes back to someone's overcomplication or whatever it is.
Overcomplexification.
Too many syllables for my brain. But, and I think that's true. And I think sometimes complexity can be a sort of cloak for value, and that creating something that looks complicated and looks shiny and difficult can almost be used as a means to support charging or something like that. So we wanted to really bring that down, and we wanted to do it ourselves. So again, referring to what we were doing, what Phil was saying, we made an early decision that we wanted to build all our software in-house, and we wanted to integrate as much of the product as we could in terms of the infrastructure, so the platform operating and the discretionary permissions. And we could do that because our product range is so narrow and our portfolio range is so narrow. Actually, the risk of trying to build something huge just it didn't sit with us, and it was just, right, we just need it to deliver certain things. But that was quite a testing model for the regulator to get their head around, because it's, one, it's restricted, and 2, you've got a startup here who is looking to create what would be called a vertically integrated model. So again, having the ability to sit with them in an audience and explain why that is actually a positive thing, again, worked well for us.
Okay, and so you'd recommend that experience out there?
Yes.
Okay, and the people that you worked with, do you continue to work with the same people? Is it a different group? Has that sort of understanding of your business, has that carried forward in the relationship with the FCA?
Well, once you come out of the unit,
you're out.
You're out. Yeah. So you go back in. I mean, you can go back in. I mean, we've done some initial conversations around our at-retirement offering, because again we found it well, and obviously with that retirement it introduces a new range of challenges in terms of how you engage with customers and a different demographic of who you're engaging with. So having that ability to test certain thinkings with the regulator is a positive. Is quite a positive.
It's really interesting what you said about that. Reducing. We talk a lot about reducing friction, and so reducing the number of screens people have to go through before they can have a recommendation. And in a previous life, I was working in digital marketing in retail, and they're actually sometimes trying to add friction into the process because people feel nervous if things move too quickly. But because of the regulatory framework, what our customers expect comes from other experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
But is is much harder to deliver in that regulatory context. I want to look at to see if there are any questions for Anthony. No questions. Fine. So in terms of since you've gone through that process, are there any particular challenges that you faced as a business?
Oh, so many.
The rebranding being one of them.
I know. Well, I suppose if I've just picked two, then. So technology. Again, as I say, we've got probably 20 odd developers and various people in our business at the moment, and because we made the decision to build our own technology, and that enabled us to control our proposition. So, it's built to what we need it to, so there's no dropping in of other people's technology, which means we can adapt as required. The obviously downside of that is it's bloody expensive, and secondly, it just takes longer. So, not a naturally technologist, or whatever the word is, it's a learning curve for me to realise that some things don't happen on time and some things don't work as intended. So that's quite an interesting one to get through. Yeah. And then the second challenge was leading through onto the rebrand, but also sort of validating the decision to build everything in-house was within about 6 to 9 months we'd realised that we're about 70% of the people we were giving recommendations to, we were recommending didn't invest, primarily because whatever money they thought they had to invest would almost certainly have been better spent paying down debts, building up cash saving funds, and so that once you get past the thing, oh shit, that's not what we were building. Yeah. You actually recognise that. Once you start thinking, well, actually, the majority of our customers here aren't investors. So that means you have to do a pretty big pivot there in terms of what you deliver. But that turned into an opportunity because it's enabled us to embrace a lot of the open banking opportunities that exist there and develop our proposition so that those people, those 2/3, 70% of people who were telling not to invest, we are able to give them tools now that will hopefully get them from not being able to invest immediately to becoming investors at some part of the time. And it's those people who, we started off thinking, well, people with barely any money don't have anywhere to go for financial advice. But for those people who, should be saving rainy day funds or paying down their debts, then at the moment, I think perhaps they've got a debt charity or somewhere to go. So it's opened up a much broader range of customers for us.
Great. Okay. Really, really interesting. Thank you, Anthony, for sharing that experience with us.